It's a delicious recipe, easy to make, and it's kind of fun too. You're gonna love this one. Cottage pie. That's what I'm making today. It's called cottage pie. Now, if you're wondering, where did cottage pie come from? Is it anything like shepherd's pie? All right, first came cottage pie, then came shepherd's pie. And that's the way it works. They're both, not Scottish, I was about to say Scottish dishes. They're both Irish dishes. The Scots have a very similar dish, but it usually involves pastry rather than potatoes. So we're not going there yet. Today, this is going to be cottage pie, and the difference between a shepherd's pie and a cottage pie is the meat that's used in it. In a shepherd's pie, you're going to be using lamb. In a cottage pie, you're going to be using beef. Very simple. Now, here's the thing. Do I want to make this exactly the way it was made back when? Okay, we're talking late 1700s, early 1800s. So it was hundreds of years ago when this was invented, and it was brought about in a time of, well, when it was a little harder to get food. We'll just say that. This time of famine, of difficulty, folks were, having to do what they had to do in order to feed their family and themselves. And that meant using everything. So often they would use the leftovers from previous meal. You take those leftovers, you shred them, you turn them into something totally different from what you had the day before. It's kind of like when you take the Christmas turkey and make turkey sandwiches. That kind of thinking. So they're wanting to use up their product. They take what was from the day before, they would shred it, make a gravy, cook some onion with it, put potatoes with it, and bam, you've got a whole new meal. And you're feeding a lot of people for the low cost of some potatoes. Well, that's what we're going to approach in that spirit, something inexpensive. Because right now, this is, well, we're looking at, I think, May 5th. And because it's May 5th of the year 2020, we're in some economic difficulty right now. Okay, so not everybody has their cupboards lined with really fresh, wonderful stuff. So I decided to look at this from the same perspective. I said to myself, I'm going to build this dish with whatever I have sitting in my kitchen. I wanted to do the traditional carrots and peas. Didn't have any peas. The carrots I had, well, they weren't carrots I was going to cook with, so I threw them out. Unfortunately, I let them get bad. So, no carrots and peas. I had to substitute something, so I decided, okay, I'll do it what I do. I'll be innovative. So we're going to turn this into a Southwestern style cottage pie. Well, how do you do that? Do you reseason it? Well, not in this case. We're just going to use a little different vegetable choices. So we're going to get in the kitchen and take a look at that. I don't have any ground meat or shredded meat, but I do have a big roast, and I know what to do to turn it into ground meat. So we're going to take care of that. This is a fun recipe. You can kind of mold it and shape it to what you have in your kitchen, and that's the advantage here. We're going to use up some potato flakes because there's no fresh potatoes. Ladies and gentlemen, this is cottage pie with whatever's in the kitchen. Let's get in there and cook up some good food. Come on. That's where it starts, right there. I've got a chuck roast. It's a nice sized chuck roast. And with that chuck roast, I'm going to put these delicious looking ingredients. I've got a whole plethora of goodies right off to the side here. I've got makings right here for mashed potatoes. Now, as I mentioned, don't have fresh potatoes, but we're using what the pantry gives us. Powder will work great for this dish, all right? Not a problem. I've got some butter here that's going to make those mashed potatoes stand out, and of course the water to make it with. And back here, got some beef broth. Had some leftover beef broth from a previous dish. I saved what was in the carton in the refrigerator, and here it is. We got some flour down here, and also got some onion, poblano and a little bit of corn. Yes, you bet, corn. Also, we got some cheese, and to flavor this with a bit of salt, Worcestershire sauce, and black pepper. So we're keeping it all pretty basic and simple. This is what we pulled from the pantry, and now I'm going to get busy grinding that meat so we can make the world's best cottage pie right here. When you're like me and you just keep chunks of meat sitting around because that's what's practical, well, then you always have meat for ground beef or for a roast or whatever. And that's the reason I really like to use a good sized cut like this. Now sometimes I'll do what I'm doing here, which is just separating that meat right along where those two muscles grow, right along the natural line where they come apart. Now I do want to look and see if there's anything I want to remove, like excess chunks of fat or connective tissue, like that right there. That can go away. All right, no good for me. So I have my grinder here. It's one of those mixer attachments. Let's get this done. Now sometimes if your grinder bypasses on that edge a little bit, take a wrench, if it comes with one, and tighten that collet nut, like so, and that'll resolve that problem. As you can see, this is a process that goes pretty quick. If you have long fingers, don't stick them down in that tube. They make the tube pretty long, but don't, tempt fate. Now another thing I want to mention, never stand in front of this nozzle right here. If you stand in front of this, it'll spit. They do it regularly. So you kind of have to expect that. If your meat is really juicy, you're going to see liquid shoot out from that aperture, okay? So don't get in front of it. Don't put anything in front of it that will be injured by meat or juices hitting it. Now I wanted you to see the entire thing on grinding a chuck roast. And ladies and gentlemen, that was 2.5 pounds of chuck right there. No problem at all. Get you a home grinder, because the quality of meat you get this way is so much better. It tastes better. Time to cut up our veggies. Got to get this diced up. Got to get this diced up. I'm going to start with the onion. Now before I go at it with a knife, let's say one thing. Ladies and gentlemen, the video you're watching right now, this is a tutorial video. I make 2 videos for every single recipe. One is a tutorial, one is a recipe video. That just shows the recipe, not all of this. If you're interested in learning knife skills and things like that, you're watching the right video. If you just need the recipe, it's the previous episode. This, we're about to get into some detail on, and it starts with holding the knife. Okay, let's talk about this. When you have a knife that's wide this way, and it's kind of offset from the blade, especially so in this case, then you want to pinch the blade as well as wrapping your fingers around the handle, all right? And the idea there is to keep the knife from rolling. If you're holding a knife like this, a lot of times that thing can just roll in your hand, and that has happened to me, and I know other people. You're cutting along and then bam, your knife has slipped. It's facing a different direction. It's either too close to your hand or it already made contact and things are bad. Pinch the blade. Stop that from happening. It won't roll now. Now when we're cutting our onion, I just need to make a flat spot on it, and the flat spot, I choose the side that's not going to leak as much. This end doesn't leak as much as the root end. That's all there is to it. It's still going to leak, like right there, but it doesn't do so as much. I need to remove that very outer layer. It's kind of thin in some spots, and I don't want that. So I'm going to do that, and then we're going to get on with processing these, okay? Okay. I'll let you in on it. Just run your knife up the side. That just kind of breaks it loose, so you can then get up under that
last piece, see how thin it was right there? Even though it's thicker in other spots, this part right here isn't going to cook up well. So just say goodbye to that entire layer, okay? You're not wasting anything. You're just getting rid of what you're not going to use. If you're worried about it a lot, put that in a stock pot and cook it up. That's how you use that kind of stuff, all right? All right, now another thing I want to mention to you, when you're working on your cutting board and handling things with your knife, and you set your knife down, if you set it like that, that's dangerous, because when you're moving around, if your hand hits that sharp edge, it can cut you wide open. Don't allow that to happen. Go ahead and turn that edge, face it the right direction, okay? Now I'm going to get this beautiful onion. We're going to split it right down the middle, and the method I'm going to show you for how to dice this out is really simple. It's much easier than the method that's taught to chefs, which is to cut crosswise this way, and then make their mincing this way. Okay, it's the same number of cuts, but this method just works a little bit easier. So as you've seen, I've quartered the onion, still got that root end intact on each one. When I take this and I cut downwards just like this and just like this, not going all the way through. That way it kind of holds itself together. I'm going to roll this over. I'm going to cut down again here, cut down again there. Now, if you'll notice when I'm cutting, keep the fingers turned under. Use this part of my knuckle as a guide so I don't cut my fingertips as I'm working. Now, once you've cut your onion quarter and you've cut it down like this, see how that spreads apart into little squares that make nice little dice when you go doing things like this to it. Isn't that too simple? So just do that to each one of them, and then catch up with me and we'll start on that poblano, okay? Okay, I'll do one more for you. Here we go. One cut, roll it, do the same thing again there, and there, and then cut your dice. Whoops, I lost one piece. That means I cut too far. It's all right. It'll still work out. There we go. Here's our onion. It's all cut up and ready to go. That's all too easy. And something I want to mention, always keep things bowled up like that. Always do all of this prep work first. We don't want to be doing stuff like this while the meat is cooking and burning, okay? You do things in a certain order. And if you do this, the French call this mise en place. It means everything in its place. You've cut everything up, you got it bowled up, and it's ready to cook with when it's time to cook. When it's time to cut, it's time to cut, okay? And right now is cutting time. When you're dealing with a chili like this, you got a couple of different elements. You have this crown up here, there's a seed pod inside, and sometimes some veins with seeds. The poblano doesn't have as many of those, but it has them. I'm going to cut the crown off right up here. Now, simple enough, but right inside that is that crown and the seed pod. So just take it, push it sideways, and get a hold of it and pull him out of there. Come on, there he goes. Right there is your seed pod that was right up inside of that. And if you'll notice, see, it's kind of nice and hollow up inside of that. If you got those extra seeds in there, that's kind of easy to deal with. You can do stuff like this or scrape them out with a spoon or a knife. And this thing is ready to stuff if you wanted to stuff it from the end. Now, if you're doing like a stuffed fried chili, you would split it, stuff it, and then batter it and fry it. Now I'm going to quarter this thing, but I want to do it lengthwise, all right? This way. And then I'm going to do it again, but I want to do it from the inside, just like that. Now remember, holding that knife the right way, keep the fingers turned under, slip your knife in there, and just hold it like this, all right, from the top edge. See there? That's what we do to safely do that. Those seeds can be knocked out now. These aren't really going to cause any problems because they're not a very hot item, okay? Poblanos are a very mild chili, folks. In fact, it's one of the mildest chilies that you can get, and that still has heat, I should say. And so it's really neat. I enjoy it because it's so very practical, and it also has fantastic flavor. When you're cutting something like this, Again, turning the fingers under. Cut from the inside out on a chili, all right? The advantage of doing this from the inside out, like I'm doing, is it cuts through that skin very easily. Many people, if they don't keep their knives good and sharp, they won't be able to cut through the outside of that because the knife slides on that skin real easy. My knife, if I put any pressure at all on it, will go right through it, but then I keep mine razor sharp. Okay, if you don't keep yours the same way, it won't do the same thing. But if I turn this over, this cuts so much easier. If you'll notice how I make a nice little stroking motion, that's an easy way of doing that. Now, another way of cutting that would be a rocking motion. You could do this, okay, or a forward cut like that. I don't like that as much because what you saw right there, my tip will sometimes catch on things. But that back, like this one, works great almost every single time. All right. So, we're going to take this, we're going to make us some dice. Now when you have a whole bunch of stuff like this and it kind of wants to just go everywhere on you when you push your knife through it, and there it is spreading out everywhere, that'll drive you nuts. Number one, you can do smaller batches. That makes it easier, all right? Now I do big batches because I'm used to doing this a lot. But just make yours a little smaller. And then the next thing, you know, I tell you to use that crab technique. Well, what if you got stuff like this? Here's how it works. Little pinky goes next to the board right here, and it keeps the stuff from sliding over, okay? Keeps that from happening, all right? So, and it's still turned under the same way these others are, but you're just bringing them over on top like this, you see? This is still your cutting guide right up here, and that thumb is still behind, all right? And then we can start doing stuff like this, making that, oh, so easy. See how that works? Now work that in a circle for you. I'm not trying to be fancy or do anything that's you know, you shouldn't be doing. Don't try that, okay? I did that for the camera's benefit, but normally I'll just stay in one spot and work it out nice and quick. All right, go ahead and finish cutting yours up. We're going to get moved right on to that next part. Sometimes when this thing is over full, I love this type of measuring cup, but when it's over full, it'll make a mess sometimes. And I guess that's my fault for overfilling it, but you know, stuff like that just happens. All right, I'm going to knead this with a high flame. Okay, this is for those of you who are brand new to cooking. If you've got electric heat, you know, medium heat is medium heat, but match the burner to the size of the pot. So if you've got a narrower diameter pot, use smaller burner, okay? And then it's simple enough on that. Medium heat's medium. Full heat is full heat. On a gas stove though, when you turn it on full heat, there's a difference between light and high. High, that flame comes in just a little bit and it points straight up for these smaller pots. So go ahead and adjust your flame so that it points up on those outer edges. So it's at the highest setting without pushing outward, and it'll heat that pot a little bit faster. As that's heating, I'm going to go ahead and put my butter in here. There we go. Come on, get in there. Here's the rationale here, folks. Here's what I want to do. I want to get the mashed potatoes made. Okay, all I have to do here is boil this, mix this in. Once it's stirred, cover it, set it aside. It does its own thing. It'll be fine. It may get stiff. Don't worry about that. If it gets stiff, we're going to thin it with a little milk. Water's up and boiling, so it's as simple as, hold it before I put my flakes in there. If you want these mashed potatoes to be seasoned, this is the only time that you get to do that, all right? So I'm going to put about, a teaspoon and a half of salt right there in that. The only thing I'm interested in salting is this, because everything else below it I think is going to have enough of its own salt. But mashed potatoes are just bland without it. All right, this goes in. Just give it a nice stir. You can turn the heat off at the same time. And the whole idea here, don't overstir this. The minute it has combined, just like that, stop. No more. If you do, it makes it dense and heavy. That right there, folks, if you want decent mashed potatoes from the powdered form, that's how you do it. If you overwork it, whip it, all that stuff, it just ruins it. I need to sear my meat. This pan is about that temperature. You see how when it beads up like that? That's when you get that effect of a vapor barrier between the water and the hot metal, okay? This is the Leidenfrost effect. When I'm heating a pan to sear meat, vegetables, or anything else, I'll heat it up until it's this temperature before putting oil in there. Okay, so this is, of course, you know, we're in our tutorial here, so understand something. You're going to get a lot of information. You don't want your oil to break down or degrade as it's heating up, and it will. So you only put it in there at the last minute, and you get the best lubricating properties of the oil, all right? And that's all there is to that. This is ready to cook some meat. Now the advantage of doing this, I get a sear, and that gives me flavor, okay? And it won't stay that way, but it'll start that way. Well, this has quieted down. There is a lot of moisture in the bottom now. However, the initial impact, what I wanted to achieve, which is some searing action and developing flavor, that happened right there. Okay, so we've changed the flavor of all of this, and we're just going to let it cook and cook out some of that moisture, and I'm in no rush about this. Here's the thing though, I've got a big pan and I've got a lot of meat. This thing right now is on high heat, and I'm going to leave it there until I can get that moisture cooked out and ready for my vegetables. And this, I might want to mention, this is also the reason we use a nice wide pan like this. When you're trying to get moisture out of something, this is how we do it. And we're looking to thicken up juices in this later. Everything that's flavor is going to concentrate. All I'm removing is just the water. Concentrated flavor after that makes for a really, really good savory dish. Everything is getting cooked up beautifully here. I just need to get my vegetables in this and get them cooking with it, because we're going to combine flavors and it's going to be good, let me tell you. I need to make a basic brown gravy. There's a lot of different ways of doing this, folks, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to start the same way I would as if I had pulled hot drippings out from under a roast. And that's usually a couple of cups worth when I do a roast. So that's what I'm starting with there, 2 cups of beef broth. Bring that to a boil. Once it starts to boil, I'm going to mix in my thickener, which is going to be that flour mixed with a little bit of cold water. I'm about to make my gravy. When it comes to making gravy and you're doing this method, which is hot liquid like a broth, and then you're going to thicken it, I need my thickener, which is flour, to not clump up. The way to prevent that is to mix it with water by shaking the two together. There's a little lesson you gotta learn. Please don't learn this the hard way. If I mix this flour with hot water by shaking the two together, it'll explode because of sudden expansion. In other words, even in a mason jar, if you screw it closed and you shake it up, if the jar doesn't shatter from the pressure, when you unscrew it, it'll spray hot water with flour all over you. Okay, so don't go through that. Cold water only. Cold water will not cause this to expand. When it hits the heat of that liquid over there and then we stir it in, then it'll expand. That's the way we want to do it. We want to mix first, then expand. So I'll take my flour, I want to put it down inside of what's called a standard bar shaker. You don't have to use these. Like I said, a mason jar will work. Put your water in this. And that was about half a cup of water. And there we go. Give it a good shake. It's leaking a little bit, but that's not a big deal. Alrighty. Now I can take this and get it stirred in to my broth. Here we go. I'm putting about half of that in there. We'll bring it back to a boil. Add the rest if needed, and it probably will be. I think it will be. I'm going to go ahead and add it. Now I'm going to get some black pepper in this, and I need plenty of it. Now this grinder really kicks it out well, so it's an advantage. Otherwise I would use pre-ground. This is real important on this Worcestershire sauce, folks. This ingredient is important for several reasons. Flavor is part of it, but also the acid. The acid it contains is extremely important to this dish. It's what brings out all of those other flavors. It's in the background by itself, and it is good, but what it does to the other flavors is absolutely heavenly. We need that. Okay, I'm going to give that a moment to cook. And the idea here is I want to cook out the flavor of the flour I have in there. It doesn't need any cooking beyond that other than just take care of that flour flavor. And also, it'll thicken it just a little bit more. Got my gravy at a high rolling boil, and that can cook like that for about 10-15 minutes. This is starting to caramelize on the bottom. Look at that. So we're building flavor. Oh yeah, exactly what I wanted to do. So all of that caramelized surface that I'm scraping and about to build more, some of it's on the meat and some of it's on the vegetables right now. Every bit of that is concentrated flavor. So what we're doing now is we're doing a trick in cooking called stacking flavors. And that's where, you know, I take a pot like this and I'll cook this stuff, but instead of just cooking it, I also caramelize it so there's a second flavor. And then I'll take gravy and put on this, so boom, there's another flavor, and it breaks loose the fond on the bottom of the pan, adding to that, and makes for a fantastic mixture. Then we're going to top that with yet another layer of flavor. So literally stacking flavors both in the make as well as in the design. Always when cooking things like this, this is the sauce that flavors the whole bottom half of this dish. All right, so I'm going to pull a little bit of this out. What's on the spoon is for me to taste and know if I need to make an adjustment to this. Does it need more Worcestershire, salt, pepper, what? Oh, that's very good. I'm liking it just the way it is. It's time to go ahead and get my gravy right down in this. I'm going to turn off the heat on my gravy, give it one final stir, and pour it straight into my meat mixture. Oh yeah, there it goes. I'm going to go ahead and turn the heat off on my pan here. Look at that. And I'm going to go ahead and get all of this mixed together. And once it's fully combined, I have a big pan full of heaven right there. Oh yeah. Nice. Bring my heat back to this. Now once again, going for a little thickening, no more than that. I just want to thicken this up, break loose that fond. Oh, yeah. Do you see how the meat mixture kind of stands up on its own now? It'll hold its own shape rather than flowing back out like a liquid. That's what I wanted. Before it had too much liquid, now we've cooked off just enough so that it kind of holds its shape. It's getting a little firmer. It's going to get more firmer when we bake it. Those mashed potatoes. Now they're kind of firm, firm-ish. Okay, it's soft, but not as soft as I would really like. So what I want to do is I'm going to add, let me get this out of my way. I'm going to add some heavy cream to this, about 1/4 of a cup to maybe 1/3 of a cup. And I'm using heavy cream. You can use milk, you can use water, or just thinning it, that's all. I happen to have the cream, and so that's what I use. And by the way, if you're wondering why I happen to have the cream, we're in a time where people don't want to go to the grocery store very often. I'm one of those folks, and as a result, I keep cream instead of milk. Cream will keep for a month and a half. Milk spoils in a week. So, just a little bit more. Now the whole idea here, I want more of a soupy kind of mashed potato. Not because that's the kind of mashed potatoes I like. It's because I'm expecting these to cook off some of the moisture in the oven. All right, and as that happens, then, well, it's going to firm them up. So that was my anticipation, at least. Okay. So also with these being in this consistency, if I wanted to pipe it, it would be easier to pipe. If I want to spread this out, it's going to be easier to spread and get across the top of that. Okay, so it makes it workable. All right. So there we have it. That's all mixed up and ready to go. I'm ready to assemble. At this point, all of the flavors are combined. Everything is together. I just need to get meat mixture on bottom. Oh yeah. So now I want an even mixture, and I'm going to kind of work it down so it's a bit firm. Pack it, you might say. And I want that on purpose. I'm looking for a certain texture in this. When I pull it out of here, I'm kind of hoping, and I don't know it'll happen, I'm kind of hoping that I can keep most of it intact instead of it becoming very fluid and just falling apart on me. What a beautiful item, huh? So just like if I was spreading a real thick layer of frosting on a cake, looky there. Not much difference, is there? So here's the thing. This part, all I'm trying to do right here, I don't care about the marks on the top of the mashed potatoes. That doesn't matter. What I'm actually trying to do here is to get a level, uniform surface where it's even. No parts are stacked too high above the others, and that way it'll have a nice look to it. One last thing that we need to do, and that is this cheese. Oh yeah, didn't want to forget that. I think that's an important part right there. Okay, now, so here's the thing. How long do I cook it? Well, I want to cook it long enough so that A, the cheese is thoroughly melted. I want to cook it long enough so that I get good cooking action throughout and make sure the heat is thoroughly penetrated, because I want this sucker hot when I serve it. All right, and then beyond that, it's mostly just a matter of appearance, because after all, everything in this is either cooked or something that doesn't have to be cooked to eat. So all we have to do is bring it up in temperature, melt the cheese, and get it to set up, basically. So this beautiful dish started right over here with chuck. That's about 2.5 pounds of chuck, and I didn't remove much fat at all. And of course, over to the side here, we have some mashed potatoes, all the goodies for that. I used 1 quart of water. I used 2 2/3 cup of powdered mashed potatoes, and then a half a stick of butter, which is 4 tablespoons of butter right there. 2 cups of beef broth, a heaping measuring cup of 1/8 of a cup of flour. So it was a little less than 1/4 cup, more than 1/8. 1 medium onion, 1 poblano, medium size there, and about a half a cup of corn nuggets. I started with a little over half a cup of cheese there, maybe about 3/4 of a cup. Add more if you want more on yours. And then on our ingredients here, salt, I'm not going to tell you how much to add because your beef broth may have salt or not. Your butter may have salt or not. And I don't know what you did when you were cooking that meal, but I'll tell you what, use some salt sparingly, taste things before you add it. On the pepper and the Worcestershire sauce, remember Worcestershire sauce also salt in it. 2 to 3 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce and 1 to 2 teaspoons of the black pepper. Wonderful recipe. Now let's take a look at the finished product. I think we have a fantastic pie here. Oh, I'm looking forward to cottage pie. Here we go. Keep an eye on it. Make sure it doesn't burn. Give it a little bit of browning on the top. Make sure you melt your cheese, and then it's ready to enjoy. All right, now, don't really think this needs a knife to cut it, but I thought I would try to at least be a little bit clean about it, but it doesn't look like it's going to work with me to that extent. Some of that cheese at least. It's good. I've already tasted. You know, this guy's just right. Exactly what I was hoping for. The flavors, everything are spot on. I could maybe used a little smaller dish, which would have made those layers thicker. Just a different way of doing it. So there we have it. Fantastic cottage pie, worth your time and trouble. This recipe is really good. It's very, very rich and robust, very beefy, and it's something I'm going to sit and enjoy. It's a good meal today. Thank you very much for watching this. If you would, please take a look in my description box. You're going to see some links there to my channel, Texas Cooking Today. There's a lot of recipes here. Also, you're going to see a link there to my website, and that's where you're going to get merchandise for Texas Cooking Today, as well as the recipe. And there's a lot of other stuff that I have there. If you would, please take a look there. And thank you very much for watching this. Enjoy your cottage pie. Bye-bye. Okay, come to me.